When I was young, I'd say 8 to 11-ish. My sister, whom is 7 years older, would babysit when my parents were out. At the time, she smoked a lot and my parents made her smoke outside, of course. So I'd follow her outside, play around, annoy her and such. One day my sister notices a car at the end of the driveway, just sitting in the road. It's a white SUV with a bike rack on top. It has the most tinted windows I've ever seen. You could not see inside from the side. It sat there until she went inside, then would drive to the end of the road and sit at the church parking lot and wait. Wait until she'd come out again for another smoke, and it would repeat this. Odd, but my sister is a brave lady and just kind of ignored it. That is, until the next day, while my parents were out again and it showed up again. It would sit at the end of the driveway and just watch. I don't know what the driver was doing, but he was watching my sister. I know because if I didn't go out, I'd watch from the front window and it would just sit there and watch my sister. She told my father, who was a sheriff deputy at the time, and he called the cops and made a complaint. They showed up, looked around, but the SUV was nowhere to be seen. Months went by and nothing. Then one day, a good 9 months after this had all started, and around 4 months since the last sighting, it was back. It became a regular occurrence. Another day, my sister was outside doing her nasty habit, and sure enough, here it comes. This time we were all alone as usual, and she decides she has had enough. She tells me to stay in the carport and she's going to go confront them. She starts walking toward the SUV, and halfway down the driveway, she would later remark to us, I felt utter terror, like I knew if I went any further, I was dead. I was paralyzed by pure fear. She turned around and went inside. Finally, the family car was in the shop for some kind of issue, so we were all stuck home for the night. While my parents are home, my sister goes outside to smoke. I go outside with her, and eventually the SUV shows up. She tells me to run inside and tell my father, and I do. My dad promptly gets his gun and starts briskly walking down the driveway with it in hand in the direction of the SUV, but not leveled towards it. The SUV floored it down the road and peeled out onto the nearby large highway. My dad, being a cop, noted the year-end model and distinguishing features. The scariest thing, the license plate had been covered in duct tape. We never saw it again. I moved to my dad's when I was 10, and I didn't know anyone in the area except for the family. My dad was friends with a single mom with 3 kids. Luckily, there was a girl a couple years older than me. She was 12 at the time. I met her, and we got to know each other a little over a couple of years. We weren't close, but we ended up having the same friends. One night, my friend Rob was hanging out with her and her younger brother. They happened to be in the house alone because my friend's mom was at work. Her mother has been helping this one lady through her work and got to know her fairly well. She found out her sister was in a mental institution and was let out recently. The night Rob is hanging out with my friend, they get a knock on the door. My friend thought it was just their mom since she knocks a certain way when coming in, and he answered it without thinking Rob wasn't supposed to be there, and he took off through the window to his house down the road. He never gave it much thought. It wasn't her mother. It was the sister of a woman her mother helped, and she found out by talking to the sister where her family lived and her mother's work schedule. She came over. I don't know the details here, and I'm glad I don't. My friend's younger brother ran to the neighbor's house to call the police. The lady brutally murdered my friend the week before Christmas, brutalizing her. She even hit her head. They had to look for a presence, and I don't know where they found it, but they did. I wasn't allowed to go to her funeral. It happened to my wife's grandmother about 15 years ago, while we were still dating. Her husband had just passed away about a year previously, but she'd been going down to the library and volunteering. It was exercise and socialization. This was in the winter, so her walk back was while it was getting dark. The library closed at 5, and there was some extra stuff to do before everyone actually left. And on this particular night, she turned down a ride from another volunteer because she needed to stay in shape. The house is about a mile away through some lightly wooded area in South Texas. And as she's about halfway home, she notices someone behind her. He's walking the same direction and gaining on her, which in itself isn't all that particular. She's old, and thus not particularly fast. But in this case, he seems vaguely sinister. They keep walking. Pretty soon, he's right behind her. Then he falls into pace, just staying behind her. Now she knows something's up, but she's almost home. She can see the top of her driveway coming up, and she leaves her lights on so it'll look like someone's home when she's walking in. She just needs to make it another 150 yards and 100 all that time. She said he was so close that she could feel his breath on her neck. About 50 yards away it happened. A strong hand on her shoulder. "Okay, bitch, don't turn around and give me your purse or I'll ruin you." She freezes for a second, then takes one big step forward, turns around and shoots the guy in the neck with the E. 38 she keeps in her purse. The guy spent the next 5 years in a prison hospital until he died of complications. My wife's grandmother died last year, but until the very end, she lamented that she pulled the trigger too soon.